So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to this web talk on managing water and climate change, a big task. My name is Patrick Waltz. I'm responsible for the civic education program of the Friedrich-Naumann-Foundation for Freedom in Hessen and Rheinland-Pfalz, 2 states in Germany. And this event was organized together with our office in Colombo, Sri Lanka, where my colleague Wolfgang Heinze is responsible for our projects in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. Together, we were able to bring a panel of experts from different continents and fields of expertise together. Thank you, Wolfgang, for your invaluable support. It's nice to have such a huge network within the foundation. Climate change is a topic that, at least in Germany, surfaces when there is no other big crisis on the horizon, and when we just had another month that is the driest, wettest, or hottest in recorded history. But as the summer and the heat wave ends, or as new topics get into the headline, we won't forget about it and put it to rest until the next summer comes, or the next season with lots of rainfalls, and then we talk about it again. As one aspect that climate changes, obviously, is water. And that's why I wanted us to discuss about water today. And South Asia, especially India, has a really interesting water system with the Ganges in the Indus Valley and all the water from the Indian Ocean condensing at the Himalayas, raining down and feeding into a river system that itself, feeds hundreds of millions of people. So it's insanely densely populated with some states, I looked it up, have over 1,000 people per square kilometer. And in Germany, we have 250 about per square kilometer, and we consider ourselves quite densely populated. So this is really another level. And of course, a changing in climate change means shifting weather patterns, and with hundreds of millions, at least in this area, living off the water system, this is quite an interesting situation, to say the least. And other regions of South Asia have different problems, and I'm glad if we can have a glance at them. In Germany, we have temperate climate, but we also have been experiencing floods, like 2 years ago in 2021 in the Ahrtal with more than 100 deaths, or droughts last year when the rivers Rhine and Elbe dried up enough to impede water traffic, which came at a bad time because we needed to ship coal, because we didn't have any more gas from Russia. So we needed to switch to coal and realize, oops, it's difficult to transport it. So how will this develop in the coming years and decades? I mean, the development for the next years is already locked in by our behavior of the past years and decades. We can't change anything about that. But beyond that time frame, what can we do? How can we adapt to these changes that will be coming or that have already set in? And what needs to be done to prevent the situation from worsening in the next decades. But obviously, what can we do? That's because simply sitting idly by and watching it unfold is not the option I'd recommend, and I don't think any of the panelists would recommend. And that's why I'm glad that we have you here. First of all, we have Ms. Apurva Pathak. She's a doctoral candidate at the Faculty of Legal Studies at the South Asian University in New Delhi. And her research is on water as a human right and how climate change affects this access to water. Thank you for having us, for being here with us, Ms. Pathak. Then we have Dr. Selvaraja Padmaraja. I hope that's recognizable. Sorry, sorry. I'll unmute you to give you the opportunity to. Okay, so please correct me as soon as you unmute it, so that you're not.
No, that's right. But you can call me Padma.
Okay, Padma. Dr. Padma, great to have you here. Dr. Padma is senior lecturer at the Department of Agricultural Engineering at the University of Peradeniya in Sri Lanka. And as an agricultural engineer, he specialized on water. And so I'm really looking forward to your input on this technical or on the science part of water and how it reacts to the climate change. And from Germany, I welcome Joachim Müller-Jung. He's a science journalist. He's heading the Department of Science for the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. And he's been writing his finger store on climate change and how it affects us and how it will continue to affect us. And so I'm very glad that he has joined us and that he will offer the input from Germany, from the broad perspective. Thank you, Mr. Müller-Jung, for being here. And finally, I'd like to welcome our moderator, Ruven Ziens. He is a freelance journalist who has also focused on agriculture, but also renewable energy, who's also traveled Asia and who I think will offer us a good overview or has a good overview of all the topics concerned and who will lead us through the evening. And with this, I'd say enough of the introduction. Let's the web talk begin. And Mr. Ziens, I'll hand over to you and watch the whole situation unfold.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walz. Actually, I'm right now in South Asia. It's midnight already here in Thailand, and I'm very glad that I can be here, the moderator for this very important panel, I think. And before we go deeper in this issue of climate change, I would like to know from Mr. Dr. Padma, can you explain us why does the climate change has such an effect on the drinking water situation worldwide, or especially in South Asia?
Okay, great. So that is, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I hear you very good.
All right. So first, the audience, I assume that non-technical. So let me start with what is meant by climate change to the general public, right? So technically, climate change is the change in weather pattern, average weather pattern over 10 years time. So if it changes within 10 years, we say it's climate is changing. But how people feel the climate is changing is different. I mean, they don't know what is changing, but if you talk to the rural people, they say the temperature is very high in the night, rain is not coming on time, or we have floods and droughts and all sort of things. But actually, basically, the global warming increases the temperature. Everything else is coupled to that. So it affects the water cycle. When the temperature is high, it increases the evaporation, reduces the water amount in the lakes, rivers, soil, groundwater, everywhere. So that is why the climate change affects water, because of the temperature increase. So is that answer your?
So that means if we don't change anything or we don't do anything about the climate change, soon we don't have any water more to drink, at least maybe in countries where it's already affected a lot.
And even if we stop the greenhouse gas emission right now, the climate change will continue to happen. I mean, for many years, right? So we can't just stop it today and expect everything to change overnight or something like that. It might take decades, 20 years, 30 years to come back to the normal thing. That is one thing. But this water, when you say water, I think you are talking about drinking water.
Yes.
Yes. If you look at the fresh water, the amount of water used for drinking is different from countries to countries. Say, for example, India, Sri Lanka, and this region, we use about 90% for agriculture, then about 2 to 3% for domestic purposes, and then rest for the industry. Whereas in your part of the world, it may be about 60% for agriculture, even lower than that. And industry is the second one, and then like that. So in the case of water shortage, all the governments give priority for drinking water. So they tax agriculture and they somehow they try to provide drinking water. So you will not be deprived of drinking water anyway, I think, because of the climate change. So people will try their maximum to do that, because you can even, they will go for expensive technologies like purifying the seawater. Say some countries, they are already doing it. So because it's a human right, it's a right for drinking water, some more other we have to face that. Or else at least you have to import it or whatever it is, but you may not have it in your own location. This one, we have to do some arrangement, and we will see later how we can deal with this situation. Right? So what is really causing? For example, if I say the domestic water use, earlier I talked about agricultural water use. Now, if you take the domestic water use, I heard, so US is using about 5 times more than the India or South Asian countries. So it may be the case with Germany as well. At least 5 times more, that's the minimum margin. So it could be even 10 times or so forth. So you can think, I mean, if in case of shortage, if a man in India can live with 5 times less water, so why can't the US? There's a classic example in Australia. You must have heard about this millennium drought in Australia. Have you heard about it? They had 10 years of droughts continuously. From 2001 to 2010, it's very, very popular case. Millennium drought in Australia. I happened to be there in about 4 or 5 years for a groundwater workshop. And they introduced that millennium drought and how they dealt with it. The 10 years of continuous drought. So even a developed country, they had to cut down the domestic consumption by various means. Later we can talk about it. What can we do to reduce the domestic consumptions? For the time being, I will give it back to you. Or is that you want, or you want something else?
No, it's fine. So you said, for example, in India, 60% of the fresh water will be used in the agriculture.
India, 90%.
90%.
It's in developed countries, it's around
Europe, it's less
than 70%.
But that means it will be a catastrophe if it's the climate change will not be at least stopped or get a little bit slower. Are there already any ideas how to handle with that if there's no groundwater anymore to give enough for the agriculture that they can plant their soil?
Yeah, one problem that we have in our countries is we are not utilizing the surface water fully yet. So for example, if you take Pakistan, I heard they are using only about 10% of the Indus water for agriculture. Rest is flowing into the sea. So we don't have the necessary resources to build infrastructure. That's the main problem, dams and so forth. So sometimes we have water, but we have not developed the necessary infrastructure to do that. That's one classic example from Pakistan. Indus is the longest and it just cut across the country and very rich water resource. I heard it's the world's largest freshwater supply irrigation scheme, Pakistan Indus river scheme. So, but still they say they are tapping about 9% of the freshwater flowing in the river. So one option is to use it, but again, resources, right?
Okay.
India, on the other hand, rich, I mean, so many rivers and northern part and so forth. But interestingly, India is using groundwater also a lot for a reason. One thing is they have not fully developed their water resources available. Other thing is now people found it easy to use groundwater because the farmers, it's 100% under their control. They can select their own crop, they can irrigate as much as they want, and they don't need the channel system to transport the water to their land. They can just dig a well and use it. There's nothing prevent, even in Sri Lanka, there's no regulation to prevent you pumping groundwater. And India is interesting. In India is they subsidize the energy for pumping. So they are happily using electricity is subsidized highly. If not, please correct me. It's highly subsidized. So they are pumping as much as they want.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Müller-Jung. If you hear these examples from Asia, what does it mean maybe for Europe? That shows we can just lay back and think, well, for us there will be never a problem with drinking water, which will be not enough anymore here. What do you think about when you hear this? Can you explain the situation in Europe, what we face there?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Tietz and Mr. Padma. I think it's completely different, of course, because there is, I guess, there is less awareness here in Europe about the water crisis, about the global water crisis, and especially about the homemade water crisis we have. Mr. Walz mentioned it already. We had a flooding last year, which was really disastrous. That was part of the climate change catastrophe scenario, which took place here, which got reality here in Germany, and suddenly, obviously, people got more aware of the water problem on the flooding side, but the drought side also. We had from 2018 to 2020, 4 years of really big drought here in the eastern part, especially in the eastern part of Germany. And before that, these phase, which was also as I learned from the climatologists, which is a part of the climate change already taking place. Before that development, nobody really, I guess, nobody outside the agricultural system, nobody maybe also outside the hydrology expert scene has ever thought about the water crisis. But now we can see the water crisis. We have these problems with the agriculture in the eastern part, which was really disastrous in the revenues for the revenues of this business, of this part of the business, but also for the energy sector. It was really hard this time. So there have been no awareness a few years ago, and now it's changing. I guess it's changing right now. In the moment, everybody knows there are different water problems, but these problems are really minor compared to the problems we heard just from Padma about the situation in Southeast Asia, or even look at Africa, or look at Australia, or some other countries. There's a lot of other countries where the people really would and should have more awareness, because even more awareness, and and try to use it politically to change things, because we can see, and the scenarios of the climatologists and the hydrologists are pretty clear. We have a water crisis which is get even worse in the upcoming decades. There is a new paper in Nature Water which was just published this week. It was done by a scientist from China, interestingly, and from China and Austria, and they show that the crisis is even worse than the WMO described last year, when they had published their state of the water system worldwide, the global water system. Even that was already really mind blowing for us as journalists who look at the consequences of climate change. But I think it should be more mind blowing for politicians, because there has to be done on the water side. On the COP 27 in Egypt, which took place just a couple of months ago in November, there was the first time that the climatology community really covered the water aspect and the water crisis officially. The leaders got together to discuss that problem, and they should more do to adapt and to of course to prevent further and accelerating decline of water supply.
Mrs. Patak, when we talk about human rights, we see that today already 1 billion people have no access to drinking water. When now this issue about drinking water increase and goods become scarce, the desire to access that product increases. So that means, especially in regions where there have already no human rights, or the human rights have not that high priority as in, for example, some Western countries, that's a problem for these people. What do you think? What have these people to face in the future when this crisis increases?
Yeah, see, absolutely. I mean, already due to various regions, I mean, the world is facing water scarcity, and people do not have access to drinking water, especially in the developing countries or the least developed countries. And like you said, the implementation of human rights in these countries is difficult, and therefore climate change is going to put more stress on access to water and to drinking water. So, and there are enough scientific studies which shows that there is going to be even more pressure or stress on realization of right to water. So if we talk about India only, and even Pakistan and Afghanistan, these three countries are drought prone countries. Parts of Sri Lanka also. So if we talk about India, say state of Gujarat, already there are regions, especially in the summer season, the drinking water, the groundwater reduces, and the population have to suffer. They don't have access to water, and of course to drinking water as well. If you talk about water as a right, it's very nicely and recognized at the international level. So if we talk about water as a human right, we talk about Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and then there are 2 covenants under that declaration which are specifically providing for water as a human right. They are providing for water which is necessary for adequate standard of living. But the thing is, in developing countries and least developed countries, it becomes difficult, so governments are working to provide access to water, but then climate change is putting even more stress. So you don't have enough infrastructure to provide for that. So what is needed is, the need of the hour is better water management, right? And then various technologies and all of that. So, and the thing is, if we talk about groundwater, if we talk about in case of India, like Dr. Padma has already said, we are exploiting the groundwater, because we don't have any regulation which are restricting or which are providing for sustainable use of groundwater. So we are using it excessively. 80 to 90% is used for the agriculture. But even in the household, if you go to rural areas, hand pumps, bore wells, every village would have that. Even every household would have that. We live in cities. Even here in our society, every house has their own bore well, right? Because there are no restrictions. So what happened is during summer season, the water supply is less, then people use their own bore wells for their water needs. So there is less awareness among the public about the sustainable use of the existing water resources. Also, there is lack of government implementation to make aware people about the sustainable use of the available resources. So
what do you think? What can globally, if we look at it globally, what can politics do to strengthen this right for every human to access to drinking water?
See, I believe at individual level, if we talk about, I think people should be more aware and should use the water, sustainably. There are, simple techniques of rainwater harvesting, of storage of rainwater, to store those water in the time of need during the dry season. So those things can be implemented. These things can be implemented at the individual level in each household. That can be done. Maybe if the government take this into consideration and make laws which makes it compulsory, mandatory for people to have different measures, methods for the water conservation, for the rainwater harvesting, etc., can be done. I think other thing what we can do is probably to mitigate, that is using solar energy. So for example, if we talk about India, if we talk about state of Gujarat, so Prime Minister Narendra Modi was chief minister here. So during his time, he had provided for subsidies, government subsidies for solar paneling to the public. So because of that, a lot of households here in the state have solar paneling, and they have increased the use of solar energy, because Gujarat receives the sunshine for most of the year. That same thing cannot be there for other states, but at least for this state. And we can switch to other renewable energy like wind energy. So because, like, again, if I talk about just the state from Gujarat, it has the longest coastline. So wind power is also there. So switching to those things. But then at individual level, I believe it's very limited what an individual can do other than, conserving the water usage and all of that. But even for that, I think government need to make aware people that this is necessary, that the water is reducing and there is going to be water crisis. I read in a newspaper recently that because of water scarcity, there could be possible conflict between India and Pakistan. So if we talk about international relation about India and Pakistan, we have Indus Water Cooperation Treaty in 1960s. So even through different wars between India and Pakistan, that treaty was untouched. Both the countries abided by the provisions of that treaty. But recently, because of climate change, there is even more, stress on water resources, water scarcity, and therefore there are possible conflicts. There could be conflicts, it is predicted, because of water security. So I believe at international level, better implementation of the treaties, the existing treaties, environment treaties is required. And what is necessary is the political will to cooperate on these matters. Because the thing about climate change is that it is not affecting one country. It is going to affect every country. So as you know, Bhutan is a carbon neutral country. It is not emitting carbon at all, no carbon emissions. But Bhutan is suffering the impact of climate change. Similarly, if we talk about Pakistan again is emitting very less, 0.4%, I think, emissions of the global carbon emissions. But if in the recent years only, last year only, I mean, if you're following news, Pakistan is having severe impact of climate change. They had floods. In 22, they had severe heat waves, India and Pakistan. Similar. And another country, if we talk about Bangladesh, because of heavy rainfall and rise in sea level because of global warming. So Bangladesh is also suffering, another country which is not contributing to the carbon emissions. So thing is, if we talk about Western countries, US and Europe, Western Europe, These countries have historical emissions. That means these countries are majorly responsible for the global warming. Developing countries are catching up. If we see the present emissions, again, China and India are the biggest contributors to carbon emissions, but they have started after a certain period. We have to take into consideration the historical emissions. So those are the developed countries already. So I think it is responsibility of these countries to contribute to climate finance, to provide for technology transfer regarding climate technologies. And that way, I think whole world has to cooperate, has to, collaborate and fight climate change. It just cannot be one country's individual or one region's individual fight. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Müller-Jung, you want to say something about this?
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was wonderful, Apurva. Wonderful to hear that the climate community they really have to try to advocate mitigation as fast as possible. I think this is the first priority. Of course, we have to stick to the Paris goals, climate goals. If not, things will get even worse than we have already seen in Pakistan, for example, which was really northern India. Also, it was really a catastrophe. What we see there about the flooding. I want to share another point because Apurva said, of course, it's a kind of the task for the people in every country, but also, of course, for us in the northern countries and also in the developing countries, it's very it's existential. Not just to talk about efficiency, we have to talk about efficiency. Everybody has to use water efficient and so on. But that's a simple solution. Maybe it's not easy for the people who are really in regions where water scarcity is really an existential problem. But of course, efficiency is one task. If we proceed with the climate change right now, one can see, and we have already this discussion in Europe, we have to restore also, not just conservation and efficiency, we have to restore ecosystems, wetlands. We have to restore wetlands where it is possible. Of course, where it is possible. There are some restrictions from the climate development. Of course, if you have higher temperatures, Padma already explained it. If you have increasing temperatures, you cannot maybe really have an easy task to restore wetlands if you have heat and so this is not applicable for every region of the world. But of course, where it is possible, wetland restoration should be one more discussion in this context of water management, drinking water management. And this should be integrated in, and I think this is really a priority for also for the science community, but also for the administration and for the politicians to integrate those aspects like restoration and conservation also in their climate action plans. And this is why I really was very pleased to see that the climate leaders already in Egypt, but that was just 18 of the leaders, just 18 of the world leaders met there for a new initiative on the water issue and to get serious about that. And that is not sufficient. Of course, we need more from every country or we have from every region of the world. We have to do together and try to get. Yeah, it's not a like the climate the climate contracts, but maybe something like that, a multilateral contract to really be serious about water scarcity. And And it begins for me as a science journalist, it begins with the data. We have a missing data in many, many countries, in many, many world regions, in big regions. We miss data. The WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, discussed that already. We have just, I saw it, I just looked for the numbers. Today, 60% of the member states of the World Meteorological Organization have declining capabilities in hydrological monitoring. So that's there the problem begins. We don't have enough. We need more data where we can act if we want to plan, if we want to interact, and we want to correct the wrong directions. And more than 50% of the countries worldwide have no quality management. That's another issue. We have distribution problem, we have scarcity problem, but also we have a quality problem in a lot of countries, even in the north, of course, especially in the north, we have quality problems with the industries and so on. We had this already last year in Germany with the odor, for example. There was cases. So there's not just the quantitative problem, but there's also the quality problem.
Mr. Padma, what's the reason why so many leaders in the world still don't have this issue of climate change as a high priority on their acting? Why is that so?
Yeah, actually, it's a conflict between development and the climate change. So we are asking them to mitigate, but the climate change is happening due to the development, industrialization. So if you have to address climate change, you have to then look into the contribution to the industrialization, right? So that is the conflict. So that is why the developed countries say they will continue to pollute, and they are asking the underdeveloped countries to reduce the carbon footprint, and they are prepared to subsidize for things, but they are not prepared to reduce the mitigation part. But anyway, now all agree to that, right? So hope they will take action. But meantime, we are also trying to mitigate in our own different, little way, but that is not going to be a big thing. It all should come from the developed countries, because they are the major contributors to the this global warming. That's the thing, it's the development. So here we are not contributing because we have not industrialized our country yet up to that level. But I see, as stated now, even with this low level of industrialization, forget about the climate change, the water pollution in this part of the country. I have seen in India, correct me, Aparna, no? So there are black rivers in India.
Yes.
Black rivers. I mean, I don't know whether you have seen this even in photograph, right? Large rivers, totally black color.
I'll tell you so.
Yeah.
There's this river called Yamuna River, which passes through the capital of India. That's New Delhi. And if you pass over the bridges over that river, it smells like a gutter actually, and it's black, like you said. You can smell it too. It's so polluted, and there are studies which are showing high level of arsenic content in that water. So it's highly poisonous. And that same water is used for irrigation, around that place. And that same is purified and comes as water supply for the city and the nearby areas. So that is I don't know. I mean, there are studies which are saying people in Delhi and the national capital region, NCR region, are prone to, disease, cancer. So yeah. That's rightly so. Black River, yes, that's true.
One thing which is really interesting, what I think, we all know that water has a really high value for all of us. I mean, if we don't have water to drink, it needs 3 days and we die. So we know about how important it is. On the other side, it's a human right that everyone has access to water. And on the other side, the industry and the agriculture, which we heard already, uses, for example, in India, 90% of the groundwater for agriculture. What do you think? How will be it possible in the future that we, on the one side, we give a high price to water, and on the other side, we still make sure that everyone has access to drinking water? Are there any ideas already about this issue?
Well, in my opinion, putting high monetary value to water is a solution, because the South Asian countries, including India, developing countries or least developed countries, and water, like you said, is a necessity. I mean, you need it to survive. You cannot, live without water less than 3 days. You'll die. So I don't think having higher monetary value water is a solution. But I believe the government should take initiative to spread awareness among people as to the scarcity of water and conservation of water. That would be a wiser solution rather than putting monetary, because it's a necessity. It's a necessity to survive. You cannot have high. I mean, you cannot ask poor to pay more for something as essential as water. So I don't think that would be a wiser choice, but yes. And then, of course, more subsidies, more conservation projects would be, I think, a way forward. And if you talk about South Asian countries, let's say Nepal, Bhutan, these countries, even India for that matter, we do not have scarcity of water per se, because our rivers are Himalayan rivers, so they are perennial rivers. Yes, of course, they are under the threat because of the climate change, but as of now, we have water. We have groundwater, we are exploiting it, but we have water. So a better management of those resources is a solution, rather than, increasing the price. Because anyway, there are, different parts of South Asia, of India, where they have scarcity of water. Already they are paying more. Already they are dependent on supply of water trucks, even water trains. So to those people to say that you need to pay more, I don't think that would be. And it's only going to be a hurdle in realization of right to life, right to water. So yeah.
And Mrs. Pathak, is there already the awareness of the government that they have to improve the management of the water, or there's still a lot of things to do? For example, give more information and stuff like that.
I believe government is aware about the scarcity of water. They have, they are continuously bringing in more better policy changes for the water management. But I believe what government needs to do more is on making the awareness to the public. It is the public that needs to take more initiative, more action. So in cities, people are already facing scarcity. So for example, the city of Chennai in state of Tamil Nadu, which has a lot of backwaters, which is close to the city and therefore has ample rainfall also, but it was going through water crisis. And there are several other major cities of India which are going. So that is, I don't think it is because of the scarcity. We are yet to reach there. We will definitely going to reach there, but we are still, we have time. So better water management is necessary. Water conservation is necessary. So, yeah.
I see. Mr. Müller-Jung, you want to say something to this topic as well?
Yeah, it's completely right what Apurva said. But of course, I think she mentioned, or you mentioned, the monetary incentives which have to be used to better manage the scarce water, the rarity of the water supply. So if we don't have enough water, one have to, from the political side, from the management side, so the economic side, we have to use some other incentives. If we don't want to use the monetary incentive because there is an increasing price, of course, that will be a problem for most of people, and it's not maybe it's there is no consensus. You cannot get a consensus, especially not in a democracy. You can. It will be really hard, of course. But if you don't want to introduce market prices, higher market prices, you have to put some other incentives on this issue. And I think one incentive could be, and this would be a mild incentive, I would say, for a more conservation efforts or more behavior to keep the scarcity or to be aware of the scarcity, is to confront the people with the facts. And to confront the people with the facts means, for example, to use instruments. If you have an early warning system, for example, which is missing in most of the countries, just 40% have early warning systems. But if you use the early warning systems and you use instruments and you have the data, you need the data. This is why I mentioned the data. If you can use the data to put it on instruments and show the people, the communities or the individuals, to show the people how big the problem is growing. It's getting worse and worse and worse, and you have lower and lower water supply. So people, I think this is the point where people, when there is a red alert, they got aware. If not, if you just use the conventional, the conservative methods of informing people and try to put the information into the communities and into TV or whatever, I think that's not enough. You really have to confront the people with the problem, with the increasing problem, even if it is getting worse, as we see now with the climate change, and it's accelerating. That's the problem. We need the instruments right now. If you cannot use these, really, it's really expensive. Of course, it's really an expensive effort if you want to put higher prices on the waters. So that would maybe politically hard. Really to get through with. But if you just confront the people, I think that would be a soft version of incentive.
There was this example in Kapstadt a couple of years ago where there was day zero, when there's no water anymore, was really close, and the people started suddenly to save water so much, and the day zero never came. That's an example for what you said.
That's it. That's exactly.
What I get out of this discussion so far is that there's not so much awareness and consciousness about the theme, even in South Asia or in Asia as well as in Europe. So that means what you said already, we need some alert systems to confront the people. Are there other tools how we can increase this awareness in the people? Mr. Padma, what do you think about it?
Yeah, actually, what happens is when it comes to climate change, people all agree now it is happening. It's no longer a myth or anything like that. But the problem is they don't know when it will strike and at what intensity. That is unpredictable still. When will drought come? When will flood come? They know with times. We are good at predicting for 50 years, so 2050, it's declining. But the farmer wants to know whether next season he will get rain or not. So that short-term prediction, and as said, the early warning, particularly in the groundwater use in the coastal area, when there is seawater intrusion, again, due to climate change, it can happen, pumping and this. So some countries, again, let me take the example of Australia. So after this millennium drought, they have fixed monitoring wells along the coast, and it monitors the groundwater quality. So if it goes bad, all the farmers get the message to their cell phones automatically. And every farmer is fixed with a water meter in his water pump, not to charge. but he's monitoring, self-monitoring. So that kind of things are not there in our part of the world. Farmers are not used to it, but we can train them. We have to give them, and for that we should tell them this is your entitlement. So Australian farmers know, and they know how to calculate the entitlement. If he has this much of land, if he's cultivating this crop, so he knows how to calculate the entitlement. So he will monitor it, and he will make sure that he is not exceeding it. It's a kind of self-control. So nobody's going to charge him, or nobody's going to go and check him. But they are now come up to that level. So we also must target for that, particularly in the case of groundwater use, because for groundwater, there is no agency to manage it. In India, even though Central Groundwater Board is there, but they could not manage groundwater. But they are doing something else. Even in Sri Lanka, we have Water Resources Board, even 1960s, mandated to manage groundwater, but they could not do it. So it's individually managed resource. That is a problem now. So uncontrolled way, they are exploiting it because it's at their footstep. If the energy is cheap, they will do it. So you see in India, they are using it to cultivate paddy. We don't do it in Sri Lanka. But of course, Sri Lanka is a water-rich country. Right, so it's a small country. We can easily divert water from wet area to dry area, and we are using the surface water, and we are not using groundwater. But except for one place, we don't use groundwater for paddy cultivation. But in India, it is happening. So paddy uses a lot of water. Out of 90% water used for agriculture, paddy uses about 85% of that. Out of the 90%. So paddy want water, but so there are different techniques you can use to cultivate paddy with less amount of water if you want to cultivate paddy still. Otherwise, why do you want to cultivate paddy in a water scarce area? This concept of virtual water transport nowadays. Virtual water, you cultivate something in a place where you have ample water and then transport it to somewhere. It's a kind of, they call virtual water transport. Right. So likewise, you make government policy or some decision. I mean, this area we should not cultivate paddy under groundwater, something like that policies. But in this part of the world, water is politics. Water is politics. So particularly agriculture. But we are charging for domestic water use. We are heavily charged in Sri Lanka. It's not free. But one thing is, about 80% of the rural people, they use groundwater for domestic purposes, right? Domestic purpose is not going to deplete the groundwater. So in the same area, they use the groundwater for agriculture. They are then depleting it in an unsustainable manner. You have to use groundwater, but always the recharge and use must balance. So what is happening in India is, I heard out of 36 states, about 14 states have already reported that their groundwater extraction is not sustainable. So they have to go for efficient use, as stated earlier. If you are cultivating crops, right, that is the one actually depleting the groundwater, then you have to go for efficient ways. Say, why are you using surface irrigation in that case? Go for sprinkler or drip irrigation systems. You may have to invest something money. Farmers may be reluctant to invest on those because it's the initial expenditure involved in that. So government can give subsidy rather than giving subsidy for power, which help them to extract the groundwater without control. They can give subsidy for irrigation system to develop. And also they can teach them about water requirements. I heard in India, I think it's water scarce area. Is it Maharashtra? I don't know. They have the local societies have formed water stewards. There are many NGOs now started doing it. So they have trained youths on water requirement because the central government could not involved in groundwater management. So local people are trained to calculate the water requirement and trained to manage the water, trained to monitor the water, trained to educate the farmers. If you go to the net, you will find a lot of case studies nowadays. Then they have village monitoring committees formed, and they say it's a replicable model in India, and it's even government is interested, and they are trying to replicate in different places, because groundwater has to be managed locally. You can't centrally manage the groundwater. So people have to be involved in that. So groundwater can be, since they are pumping, there is some cost involved. Indirectly, people are being charged. But surface water, of course, there is an issue. You can't introduce monetary value to that. It's politics altogether. But we have to, in Sri Lanka, we tried in certain irrigation systems. We introduced a concept called bulk water allocation concept and educated the farmer. It was actually Asian Development Bank. After rehabilitating a system, they said we have to go for this. That means, again, the farmers calculate their water quota, they calculate their water requirement, and then the agency assures that you will be given this amount of water, you have to manage it. So that is happening, but they are not charged. So that improved the efficiency. Efficiency need to be improved. We cannot afford to use 90% of the water for agriculture. So in that way, we can save a lot of water for other purposes, particularly domestic.
I see. Mrs. Patak, you also said one step or solution could be that also the awareness of the normal people have to increase about climate change and about scarce water, drinking water. What do you think? Does the media already report enough about this issue in your country, or they are not so into this theme as much they should?
Yeah, you see, already social media is a great source of information, and it is doing its part in spreading the awareness among the people. I believe another thing that governments can do is through education and training. So if water conservation, if the awareness about water scarcity and climate change is intricate part of the education system, of the curriculum in schools and in colleges, and of course training, so that way I believe we will have a generation which is aware and which knows the methods to conserve water, and has that understanding that that's there. So education and training, including these things as part of the syllabus, as part of the curriculum, could be one thing. Second thing, like Dr. Padma has also discussed, that in India, so there are various NGOs, civil society, which is actively working with the government also for water conservation, etc., etc. So one such NGO is called Seva. So it's working in state of Gujarat and various other states where there is water scarcity. So what these NGOs are doing is, like, for example, Seva is doing is, it's empowering women. It is only it's only women NGO, so only women are part of it, and they are trained to and they are trained to they go to villages, they go to rural areas, they educate people there. They are from rural areas themselves, so they are better, they know the need of water, and they know the language, and they are able to communicate it to rural public. So because in India, in a country like India, and even that's the case with several South Asian countries also, it is very difficult to to pass on the knowledge, to pass on the information which is given by the government, which is probably there in English. People are educated there, but rural people are not that much educated. So that distribution of information knowledge is through these NGOs, these civil society actors. So that's already there. That needs to increase more, so that way dissemination of knowledge is there, awareness is spread. So yeah, I think these two things could be answer to this problem.
Mr. Müller-Jung, are we especially in Germany, because you are from Germany, are we educated enough already in this theme? And when we are already educated enough, why so many people in Germany, for example, don't think so much about climate change or act in the way we should act?
Yes, I think there is not enough awareness and there is not enough education on this issue. Of course, this is not a special issue, as I mentioned it before 2018 or even maybe 2020. This was not a big topic in Germany, so it was not a topic for the politicians. It was not a topic for the educators system. So even for the health system, it was a non-problem. Even the quality problems we have from time to time, that was not really a problem. For ecologists, it's different. Ecologists, biologists, hydrologists, geologists, and so on. For special people, well educated in those subjects, it is of course a subject, and then it's part of the thinking. What Apurva said was very interesting. Training and education, and it's if you translate that, you would say, of course, water management is a kind of information management to educate people from the beginning on, information management. But I think maybe there is a discussion also in Germany about other issues than water, pollution issues or so. I think one should think about this issue of regulation. Maybe it's if you have the tradition to inform people in the urban and in the rural areas, it's, of course, there are different paces where information really diffuse through the population. So and I think the whole issue about climate change is about pace, and it's about speed and acceleration. And the problem is it's accelerating. And this is why I mentioned this issue of regulation. I guess the governments are responsible right now in the coming years really to act. And act means regulation, of course. I don't think the market or the information management and education, which is really important, of course, and should be supported by the government with money, of course, with money and the educators. But I think regulation will be an important part to get really a new direction in this problem, in the development of this problem, because with water. It was already mentioned, with water, we have one problem, but this is just one side of a big complex of problems. Soil is another problem. Ecology, the biodiversity issue is another problem. So even that is the functioning of ecosystems is really dependent on really healthy wetlands and healthy stream flows and so on. So I think a lot of interconnected problems, and I'm not sure. I'm pretty pessimistic if I just would look at the traditional systems of changing habits inside the population. So I really would prefer to have it earlier and faster than we try to change things right now. So this is what climate change learned us. It's really important now to act and not to wait 1 decade or 2 decades. Then look at China, look at, of course, India was mentioned. Look at Africa, look at South America. There are really, really great regions, big regions where we can see the disastrous consequences of climate change. Look at the glaciers, the water towers. Which are the water towers, the cryospheres, the water towers in many, in the Himalaya region, where really in Pakistan, in Tibet, in India, where people depend on the water supply of those glaciers. But if they disappear, and they will disappear, of course, in the coming decades, especially in Europe, we have this problem. Of course, in the Andes in South America, we will have accelerating problems and all the interconnected problems. And this is why I think we should discuss soft management methods and techniques, but also we should focus on government and regulations.
Okay, thank you. It's too urgent. So we already The 1 hour is already gone. But I have one more question from a viewer of our panel. And I just want to read this question. And yeah, just feel free to answer to that. And Stephanie writes, can the experts share their thoughts on the additional developments about climate change, droughts, soil degradation, the FAO projects, a likeliness of up to 90% of loss of topsoil, not usable for food production anymore in 27 years, 2050. How do they look at the pressure of securing food and the linkage to fresh water for cattle and humans?
So that is, when I can say comment this. This is what I meant with the soil issue. We have a water issue, and we have also the degradation of the soil, the desertification. There is a convention and a UN convention on the desertification problem, and it has the same age as the Convention on Climate and Biodiversity. It was born in Rio at the Earth Summit in '92. So the problem was there already. The problem was really on the table, and we are trying to do something on climate, and we are really not fast enough on biodiversity, but the desertification issue and the soil issue, the degradation of the soils. This is really a pressing for the agricultural community. I have been in Madagascar for a while and actually worked there. And the degradation, the erosion of the soil, and the consequences for the people in the rural areas are really disastrous, and it's mind-blowing. But what happens there, and I think we have to conserve also and restore the soils. That is what I meant with restoration, conserving and conservation and restoration, and we have to keep in mind that it's not an issue which is solved solely chemically by the industry to put mineral nutrients into the soil. That is no really problem, because you don't have the capacities in the soil to retention of water. If you degrade the soil is not just nutrients. It's a structure of the soil. It's the potential to retain the water in the first part of the soil and of the ground. So that's really pressing. It's a very urgent issue to keep a focus also on soil with the water issue.
Mrs. Pata, can you agree to this comment?
You're asking me?
Yes. Mrs. Pata, are you? I will ask both of you. So feel free to answer.
Okay. So I agree 100%. Yes. Because I am with agriculture background, and so this is the soil. If water is there, you can cultivate on even sandy soil, unproductive soil. So I mean, we are in Sri Lanka, even in other parts of the world, we are cultivating in almost 90% sandy soil where water is there. Coastal sand aquifers, coastal area just 50 meters away from the coastline, you get fresh water at shallow depths. Sand is totally unproductive sand. You have to put organic matter. The function of sand there is just to hold the plant. That's it. It's like a desert, looks like a desert, but you have water there. So the problem is the water availability in a soil, degraded soil. If you don't have water, then you are in trouble. At least groundwater. So the comment was 100% well taken. Then you have to do soil and water conservation. But the basic thing is we have to address the climate mitigation part. I mean, we can continue to work on these impacts. That is not going to help us. right? So we had to mitigate it. Otherwise, we are moving towards desertification, water shortage, and all those things. So who will do, how to do things we have been talking about. So what is needed is the action. Actually, I think we are not 100% into it. Action. We enter into the treaty, then withdraw and do many funny things, and it happens. So one is mitigation. So as developing countries, we can do little to that. We can contribute little to that mitigation part. We need to adapt. So in order to adapt, as Aparna said, we need the knowledge. We need the technology, right? So this should come from the developed world, particularly the resources, monetary fund. Let me make a controversial comment. How many trillions we are spending on wars? Spending on wars, how many trillions? You only need a little portion of that money to make these countries meet this climate change impact. Thank you.
Mrs. Patak, what's your thoughts about the soil issue?
See, I also agree with the comments of both the panelists. That's true. And in case of South Asia, also because of riverine floods, soil erosion and soil sedimentation happens, which makes it unfit for agriculture. So again, water comes into picture. Everything is interconnected. So we cannot, I don't think we can separately deal with soil. That is also part of water management and water crisis. So that is necessary. That part is water conservation is necessary, water management is necessary to deal with that as well. There is one more point which I would like to add to this discussion, which I could not say before. I wanted to talk about loss and damage, which is a concept with there in under the climate change regime. So it's there under Article 18 of Paris Agreement. It is also there under UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So that and technology transfer, these two aspects, provide for finance from the developed countries and the developing countries for the least developed countries, and countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, who need that money to build up their infrastructure to deal with the climate crisis. So in the recently concluded Conference of Party, 27th Conference of Party, which happened in Egypt, Pakistan led that discussion, where it was asking the parties to increase, to create a loss and damage account, because even though it is discussed in the various climate treaties, but there hasn't been any commitment from the parties to contribute to it. So, countries like Pakistan and even Bangladesh, every year they are suffering from severe floods. So for Bangladesh, it is due to rise in sea level and excessive rains. In Pakistan's case, it could be excessive rain as well as glacial melt and outburst of glacial lakes. So yeah, so these two things at international level, if we are talking about, should be discussed, and there should be more commitment from the countries, from the states, to contribute to it, to fight the climate crisis.
Okay, thank you. We have to end to finish this web talk. It's a very interesting and so important issue for all of us. But now the time is over for now. And I thank you very much for joining us here on the panel. Thank you very much, Mrs. Patak, Mr. Müller-Jung, and Mr. Padma. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks a lot for your thoughts and insights. And I hope we could bring a little bit more awareness to this issue. And I think it's very important that not just the government talk about climate change, and also the normal people have more consciousness about it. So that's why such events like this are very important. And that's why I want to say thank you also to the Friedrich-Naumann-Foundation for Freedom, who organized this web talk. And yeah, I hope one day we talk again about this issue, and then there is a lot of more acting be done as now today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting.
Thanks for
Thank
the opportunity.